This is Ann Angela Webb, the Animal Intuitive, and I'm wondering if you've ever thought about the fact that animals can help people achieve their purposes, their goals, and their dreams. Well, Dr. Paul Gabias certainly had that happen. So, how does a blind child who's actually terrified of dogs become a guide dog trainer and positively impact the lives of countless people? Stay tuned. We're going to talk about it here tonight on the Animal Intuitive Show, where you can find weekly episodes about natural pet care, animal communication, and episodes about experts in the fields of animal care and advocacy. Come on, all you doggies, won't you walk with me? I'm the puppet dog. Hi, Dr. Gabias. I just want to make sure that everyone can hear both of us. Would you mind just
Yes. Hello, Ann. Can you hear me?
I can, yes. I'm going to take your volume down a little bit, and I do have the comments
Okay.
section up, just so people know we are taking comments tonight. But I do want to just take a moment and introduce our guest, Dr. Paul Gabias. Thank you so much for being here tonight, Dr. Gabias.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. I'm very excited about tonight's show. Dr. Gabias is joining us from his home in British Columbia. He is an associate professor of psychology working at the University of British Columbia. He graduated cum laude from Concordia University and received his PhD in experimental psychology from New York University. Dr. Gabias also has an honorary doctorate through the University of Victoria for his organization of the blind community, as well as for his support of seeing, or guide dogs, we call them, in Canada. And this is amongst many other accomplishments that we're going to talk about tonight. So, Dr. Gabias, let's just start with this. It must have been very difficult accomplishing all of this in a world that really just seems to be set up for the sighted. And so if you could please tell us a little bit how you got started out in Montreal, I think it was, and how that led to becoming an associate professor of psychology and more.
Oh, sure. Well, I think my parents took the position that the world was my world, just like anybody else's. So I kind of adopted that position also. And when it was time to go to school in the province of Quebec, blind children were educated at schools for the blind. So that we were set up from day one at school. My mother explained to me that you have to go to school, and this is where they're set up for you. So of course we learned Braille very quickly, and we learned later on travel skills. So by the time I left high school, I was really academically prepared, and but you know my at the and I stayed in or the residence at the at Loyola College. So my travel wasn't that far to go, and I remember the first few days before school, my sister kind of showed me the campus, and you know that was it. Yeah, in terms of dealing with print, there was an agency. There still is. It used to be called Recording for the Blind. Now it's called Learning Ally, and a lot of the textbooks were recorded, and or we could have them recorded. We could have access to those, and for papers that needed to be read, I got good at making friends and selecting readers from these friends.
Mm-hmm.
It also turned out that at my university there was a blind professor who was teaching in the psychology department, and he taught statistics and history and systems psychology, uh, and what was it? Oh, sensation and perception. So that gave definitely a feeling that I was in a world that was still set up for me. There's a general principle here. Many times if you start in an endeavor, it isn't set up for you. You have to change it to fashion it for your purposes in business or other situations. So I just, to this day, got good at fashioning things to the way I want them to be.
Well, and it was interesting too because it doesn't sound like things kind of started out with you and dogs so well, and that became something
No.
that another thing that had to be changed. So maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, well, it started when I was a very little boy. I would go out in the yard. There was the only thing I know was it was the Houston dog, and it was in the yard in back of us. There were bushes separating us, and somehow that never came on our property. But all I could hear was it barking, and that sounded frightening to me. And I went to visit my brother Alan Johnson and Gary Johnson, and they had a dog named Chummy. And when I reached out to pet him, as they encouraged me to, he growled. I don't even remember touching him.
Oh, okay.
We went to Grandview Cottages. We rented a cottage in Vermont every summer. And Mays had a dog named Rusty. Him also, I don't remember really him, but gosh, when I remember when he started barking, I would just ran, just in my scream, and my mother, oh my God, that must be because of a dog. And so after that, my cousins got a dog, a German Shepherd named Brandy, and I loved going to visit my cousins. So I figured, gosh, I'd better get to know Brandy. And so, and there was a dog at school named Zuck, and there were just many dogs that I sort of began to warm to. A boxer named Divil, and I remember taking a walk with Divil when I was nine-ish or something in the country, and there was a fork in the road which I really didn't understand, but on the one hand, it led to a mailbox, and on the other hand, it led to a farm. And I could never, through my calculations, I thought if I did this, it should be taking us back home. Poor devil, she just sort of heeled along. She was an old dog, and that was very frightening to me. Somebody found me. My parents picked me up. My mother picked me up, and so you up from these sorts of situations. I did a lot of reading. Albert Payson Terhune wrote a lot of stories, books about collies, and his called Sunnybank. And people know that Lad, Bruce, and Wolf, and Grey Dog, and I became very Fair Ellen was a blind dog who had a collie who had puppies. And, I read Jack London and with Buck and White Fang.
Oh, yeah.
And, Albert Payson Terhune is very famous. There's a school named after him, and an elementary school named after him in Wayne, New Jersey.
Oh,
which
okay, not far from here, yeah.
Not far, and not far from Pompton Lakes, where he was from. So after that, there was a Labrador retriever named Maggie that I got to know, and she was quite different from the collie that Bonnie. They'd say, sick 'em after the cows, and she would bark. And I thought, oh God. But Maggie didn't have that. As a Labrador, they don't do that. They just like to go and run after rocks, and they love everybody. And so I thought, maybe I could have a Labrador. Then we get to the guide dogs. There was a woman who had a German Shepherd guide dog from the seeing eye. Her name was Bruni. And although she barked at the doorbell and whined, I did get to, to like her. So it got to the point where I started pestering my mother about getting a dog. And my mother had plants, and she kept saying no, no. And I remember she had a rubber plant, and I pinched one of its leaves because I was kind of so mad. Why can you have all these plants and you can't get me a dog? So they got me a German Shepherd named Raja, R-A-H, and he was. I think I was about 15 by that. But he developed hip dysplasia and died at 4 months old. It was a dreadful thing. It was my first experience with death. But after Raja, I did get to go to college, and Dr. Lambert was that blind professor that I took many classes from. But he and his wife had two golden retrievers, a Lambda Corey, that they had trained themselves. And I just thought, I remember one time being with a group of people, we were at a restaurant, and he got up and said Lambda outside, and that was it. Oh, I want that. I really be able to do that. Now, I had some cane travel training at the school for the blind, so I could get places to where I wanted to go. But it just didn't seem to me like it was as smooth as with Bob or Dr. Lambert and Lambda. And why did I get my own puppy? It was because the few dogs that I had seen that were or met that were program trained, they just weren't like Lambda at all. I wanted like that perfection that Lambda exuded. So I was living with a friend. He was an English professor on Sherbrooke Street and Schooner, a little walk-up apartment. And I guess I decided with his approval that I would get this Labrador Retriever named Rafa. And that's where it started. But there was a big history to it. It doesn't come, it just didn't happen, all at once.
Yes. And, I mentioned to people when I was kind of putting out information about tonight that we were going to be talking, I've actually known Dr. Gabias since I was a small child. I've been very good friends with his niece most of my life. And he was visiting the States where she was. That's how we met. And he had Rafa with him. And so maybe real quick, we're kind of diverting off the path, but I did do a little teaser in the stuff I sent out, as to what I did that was a little bit odd, but may have been a predictor of how I ended up working with animals. So what that is, because that involved Rafa.
I do know what it was. It was you actually sampled of kibble.
Yes.
And he wasn't eating at the time, but somehow or another you did that, and that's an interesting beginning, and yeah, as you say, perhaps a predictor to what you're doing now.
Yes, and interesting. He wasn't eating. What was his?
No, he was. Well, he wouldn't have cared. I mean, he wasn't that kind of dog,
Okay.
It's just eat.
Oh, you mean at the time I was eating the food, he wasn't eating it.
He wasn't.
We weren't eating together. Yeah, we weren't.
No, you didn't take it out of his bowl as
Right.
he was eating.
Yeah, just to clarify for everybody, I wasn't like on the floor. I went into a bag in the garage.
I think she went into a bag.
Yeah. So, and I can tell you what it tastes like. That's the thing. If anybody wants to know, I do have a pretty good idea of what dry dog food tastes like. It's still kind of stuck with me. So anyway, but speaking of that, I mean, this kind of all kind of goes with what we're talking about here, because this has to do with the human dog, the human animal relationship. And, maybe you could talk a little bit about that and and how that kind of unfolded with you. And I just want to mention that I think I've always had this idea that if somebody were blind, maybe even deaf, that they almost had an advantage when it comes to intuitively connecting with animals, especially if someone had a guide dog, or other, service animal, quote unquote, and kind of had this advantage with animal communication. So I wonder if we could talk about that, just that relationship that you have with your guide dogs.
Yeah, well, I think everybody's different, and some blind people don't like animals. Remember, I didn't at first. There was no one who was going to want to be communicating with any dog. But that developed, right? But certainly once you are in a relationship with a guide dog, definitely everybody does learn to understand each other through there's certain ways of working with a guide.
Right.
With Rafa, I remember I went to Germany. He must have been 2 at that point. I worked in the summer of 1971 at a language school, and I had to travel from home and to there and back on the buses with him. Mm-hmm. And I made enough money so that I got that job through. My mother wrote to Prime Minister Trudeau at the time, and because how do you get a blind teacher employed? Well, I guess if you're friends with the Prime Minister, you write to. What we did. So.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
I had this job, right? So the next year after that job, I decided to go to Europe with Rafa to Germany because I'd met a German professor and I liked him, and so that it was really there that he showed me that I am paying attention to where we're going, and to go. I remember from wherever it was I was staying to someplace else. He just it really clicked. I said, I can't believe it. Rafa was, I could go into how that training occurred with him, but he's the dog I learned on. And but when that happened, I thought, wow, he really is paying attention. It was amazing.
So we have to back up a second. First of all, I want to just say to everyone who's joined us on here, including JT, thank you for your excitement about being here. I'm so glad that you're here and you've joined us. If you are here, you can ask questions. If I don't get to them right away, we will address them. Dr. Gabias is perfectly happy to do that, he's told me. But we have to back up. So your mother was somehow knew, first of all, the Prime Minister Trudeau. What can we...
that's because my father and Prime Minister Trudeau, Pierre Elliott. My father and Pierre Elliott went to Jean Brebeuf together, which is high school, and their mothers were friends also. So,
okay.
And then my mother's father knew them. They all seem to know each other.
Okay.
So. I had never met Pierre Elliott, and but I remedied that maybe 5-6 years before he died. I took to writing to him, and we finally did get to go. My Mary Ellen and I, and Joanne and Jeff.
This is your wife and children.
Yeah, and Jeff was like maybe 3. And the Prime Minister, actually, he wasn't Prime Minister anymore. Somebody helping him. We were in his home. My son, Jeff, seemed to tap him with a fly swatter. And oh, God, he gave us some Chinese tea. We just had a wonderful time. At that point, we had 2 Goldens with us. Schubert and Mozu, my sister was there, and Don
Goodness.
was there also.
My
It was a
friend.
great
Okay.
time. But we
Amazing.
haven't
So,
met Justin, his son. He had
okay.
wanted us to, but the children weren't.
Oh, okay. Well, that was interesting. I didn't think we could just fly by that. But so back to Rafa. So Rafa was your Rafa was your first
Yes,
that you
yeah.
trained, and she kind of trained you, right? So tell me how that kind of developed, like the nitty gritty. How do you, as somebody who nobody trained you, right? Like you had to figure
No,
this out
nobody
yourself.
trained me. All I
Yeah.
had was intro psych, learning chapter and intro psych, but all the reading I had done with the Terhune books, but they don't teach
Sure.
specifically
Yeah.
to teach a guide dog. But so he was a puppy, and I wasn't living by myself. So my friend John Blacklock, he's deceased now. He was sighted and could kind of help with at least the basic housebreaking. But Ray was born in May. We got him in July, and I was in the dorm in the residence in September, thinking, okay, I really am on my own with him, and I hope that he's house trained enough, at least not to go into the dorm room. I had a private room,
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't. He
Okay.
didn't. But um, I, I'd seen some movies at Seeing Eye. There was I think Atta Girl Kelly, the Disney movie, where they said, "Oh, you're supposed to pretend to fall at the curbs or something." But when I did that, Rafa's attitude, "What the heck are you doing? Normally do that. What are you acting stupid for? Stop falling." That was his attitude about all of that. So I said, obviously, whatever they're saying is not going to work for this Labrador who's just happy-go-lucky. Just let me go. Let me play with people. So Dr. Lambert said, okay, just have him sit at the edge when you get to each curb, before stepping off the curb and before stepping up onto the up curb.
Mm-hmm.
Sit at the down curb, sit at the up curb, tops of stairs, the bottom of stairs, and just keep doing that. And so he got to know that, yes, okay, because they don't necessarily have to sit, but that's not how we teach them to stop. And then after a time, we can say, we can add correction if we figure, well, now you do know this, so now you have to be reliable. And so with crossing straight, you just do a lot of street crossings. Obstacle work was actually very easy. You just tap the obstacle. They're directional commands, left, right, and forward, that you have to teach them. And but Rafa was the kind of dog. He was a male college student. He was rough and tough,
Mm-hmm.
but not aggressive in any way. Just a he could just a regular sturdy Labrador, and and he he wasn't you're supposed to think of these dogs as being so careful, paying attention to their blind master. He learned to do keep away. You must know what that is, where the
Yeah.
dog
Uh-huh.
they come maybe a foot, and no, the other. So Bob told me, you've got to keep him on a long road, and enforce that command. He gave me lots of trouble over that because I didn't know what I was doing, really, right?
Mm-hmm.
But eventually it did get solved, and Bob kept because I'm going to give this dog away. He's too difficult to work with. And Bob kept saying, do you like him? I don't know if I like him. But he kept stressing that relationship,
Right.
and so I kept at it, and he molded himself over time.
How long did it
Became
take
extremely proficient.
yeah, how long did it take till you started to really see the kind of fruits of your labor with him?
Um, uh, well, we went to Germany when he was 2, and I was already traveling on the bus when he was maybe 1 or 1.5 or something. I waited with him because they kept saying with the puppies, oh well, we only take them back when they're 12 months old or 15 or 18. Where that's a long time. I couldn't afford to wait that long to start the training. So Bob had said as soon as the harness fits, start the training. So they would have been about 6 months, and so a year. He certainly knew the training. It's just that you have to, a young dog like that, you have to monitor pretty carefully. And over time, he became very, very good. But Rafa was my, yeah, I think Rafa was very smart, but he was no pushover in terms of
Mm-hmm.
had his own will too, right? That had to be shaped.
Mm-hmm.
So having done that with him, there was no dog that I couldn't train after.
Oh, okay. So he was like the big challenge, so it kind of set you up
Well,
for
he was, yeah, he
yeah.
really was. Since I was able to do it,
Mm-hmm.
even though I didn't really know. But I have to say, having Dr. Lambert to phone and to talk with was very, very uh, important.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd have a mentor, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and that's kind of what you've done that for others, right? You've helped other people.
I have. So after Rafa, my friend John Blacklock should have a dog, even though he's sighted. We got a Labrador Retriever named Hecuba, and it wasn't so difficult in those days. You could trust the lab to be reliable in
Mm,
terms of diseases. Nowadays, it's not the same. You got to do all
yeah.
sorts of screening. So then I had a girlfriend who lived in New York and had a golden retriever named Charm. And I went to New York University, and through Tony and Charm, I met lots of blind people with guide dogs, and I really saw the range of um, of how they were used. And some were good, some were not. Some were like, oh, I can't believe that these dogs were
Hmm.
by a program. Like, oh,
Okay.
uh,
Do you think there's a difference between I mean, you mentioned that
between mine and yes, I've
y-
never had dogs like that. Never.
yeah, you said that you kind of saw
There
something
was a
different.
dog
Mhm.
once that there was a restaurant that lots of blind people went to New York on 59th Street near the lighthouse where we got reading done.
Mhm.
This dog was guarding the table, restaurant table, barking at everything that came. I said, "Oh my God, I can't believe it." And so I got to see the range. And by the time Charm was getting old, we decided that I would train a dog named Flicka, but we didn't get up. We thought we need to see how they are as older dogs. So Flicka was about 8 or 9 months when we got her. Not necessarily even housebroken,
Mhm.
more from fields. And then after Flicka, somebody else thought I should train a dog for him. It was a Labrador Retriever that I named Faith. She was older too when I got her, and there were a lot of things I had to work through with her temperamentally. She was kind of more. She was afraid of things, and I had to kind of desensitize her. Well, the fellow who asked me didn't take her. He said, "Oh, she's too small." So then somebody else really liked her, and so he took her. Now, he'd never had a guide dog before. Tony had, but he hadn't. But we did that. And then finally, after her, I said, "No, I am not. I am going to raise mine from puppies from now on. That's the only way I have complete control over what happens." That my second dog was Viva, and I did get her as a puppy, and I was living alone at that time. But see, at that time, crate training was had been introduced, and I did that from Tony. So crate, it makes things a lot easier in terms of supervising what a puppy is doing when you have a crate that you can put the puppy in when you're not watching. How do you watch the blind person? You listen and you maybe use a leash or something. But now it was the one who showed me that puppies could learn and could learn quickly. By the time she was 6 months old, she knew everything.
Wow.
6 or 7 months old. She, I think I got her in January, and I took her to the National Federation of the Blind Convention, where there are lots of dogs and lots of people, 3,000 people. Extremely well, Viva did. And she, unfortunately, died of a spinal embolism. I think she was 3.5.
Oh, goodness.
So then I got Schubert, and by this time we were in Fredericton, New Brunswick, out of New York. And he was another one, kind of like Rafa, but I knew what I was doing by then. So I just know he was related to Viva. He was the last one in the litter. And they said, "Oh, we call him the Rambo puppy." I said, "Oh, I've had kind of a puppy like that before. Since he's related to Viva, I'll take him." And then that was Schubert. And then Mozu was for my wife. Schubert lived a long time. Mozu picked up something at 5 years old. The next day, she died. So I sort of took a sabbatical from dogs, but 20-year sabbatical from guide dogs, actually. This business was rather too difficult. And then I thought, you know what? I'm only going to work and going to Costco, not really getting out. And I think I was 66 years old at the time. So I said, I'm going to get Kenko. Kenko, that name, Kenko, Kenko.
Here's Kenko. I just brought a picture up there.
Oh, yes, Kenko. Well, her name is because the products with the company that I'm expanding, Nikan, a lot of the products have Kenko in them. It's a Japanese term, meaning health. So Kenko is 2.5. She's a very, very sweet dog, but she comes from field stock. So, she needs to, she's got a lot of energy that needs to be channeled. But that has toned down a whole lot. Channel is really what it is, because she can turn it on and off. And when it's time to work, she's got plenty of energy. When it's time to play, she's got energy. But right now, you wouldn't even know. She knows I'm working. So she's just lying near in the kitchen.
So I'm wondering, how do you, I'm thinking about if you're walking, around a city like New York or
yes,
with your cane, and you sort of know how to do that, and so you're in control. You're kind of doing more what you're used to. I guess I'm just thinking, when is that point where you trust a dog enough to?
Okay.
What happens? How do you get there? Is it just the?
How do you get there? Well, I use a cane while I'm training, and it's just by dogs give you notes when they're going to be distracted. You can tell when their tail is wagging, when it more than usual, or they're pulling more than usual. You get a lot of signs. And then you can, so the first thing you do is, hey, wait a minute, settle down, stop pulling, pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
And, but it's just by doing it over, spending a lot of time with them working.
Okay.
Working relationship is absolutely fundamental. And so I know Kenko so well that I just know she's not going to. I know what the sorts of things she might do and what she might not do. So let's say if she's going to be dog distracted, she's going to give me plenty of. But I know her now enough that even if she's distracted, she will stop at the down curb. She will stop at the up curb. She will obstacle clear. But it's just that the ride is a little bumpier than I. So I mean, she's gotten very good at speed control. In the icy, I can slow her down. I can, but it just comes from doing it. So even with the program trained, they may have been trained, but tell the people, it takes a year before everything starts to feel really smooth. And
Okay.
so, but if I wasn't comfortable, I'd be using my cane until I was.
So is there a moment you think when they've been doing kind of like the smaller things, where you're not in, say, a more challenging situation, and you do it long enough, and then all of a sudden one day they sort of stop you from doing something that could be harmful, and you're like, it just evolves?
Yeah, let me see. There always is a moment, like I remember the one with Kenko recently was we were going to be getting into a taxi cab in an unfamiliar place. Mm-hmm. And so I told her, forward, and she wouldn't go. Mm-hmm. And I, why is she not going? And then so that the guy starts pulling on her harness handle.
The taxi driver?
Yeah, because he doesn't speak English. Okay, so he starts pulling on her harness handle, mm-hmm. and normally she loves people, right? And she wasn't aggressive to him, but she completely resisted. Like, there's no way you are going to pull me when I don't want to move. And the reason she wasn't moving was because she wanted to make sure that I checked with my foot where the edge of the curb was.
Wow.
And she had, to her, I hadn't checked, so therefore she wasn't going to go until she knew that I knew. And
how'd you know that? You just knew because she had done that before, or was it like an intuitive?
No. Well, how did I know that? Because I know that if she's not moving, that's the deal, right? If she doesn't move, it means you've got to check. Because she wasn't. There was nothing. It wasn't because she was distracted. It was because there's only got to be one reason. You did not check with your foot. Okay. And there was another dog one time in a restaurant, and there was a step down, and we're saying forward. I'm saying forward, and God, what is distracting this animal? No, it wasn't that. Check with your foot. Wow. There's a step here that you don't expect. Wow. And they can do this. And so
amazing.
You don't know when it's going to happen, mm-hmm. but it actually happened fairly early. Now, what they're thinking, I don't know, because remember Rafa, who thought, what the hell are you doing falling like? You don't fall. Stop that. But he would do it too.
Okay.
So they just come to know that they have to be careful.
Now, do they, if
Okay.
you train the dog, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah,
But
that's okay.
I was just thinking if you were to train a dog and then someone took the dog, does it just transfer automatically? The dog?
No, no, no,
Oh,
no.
okay.
Somebody took Kenko's leash. Oh, no, she'd be jumping on them and like, oh, we're playing. No, there has to be that whole, um, there has to be, particularly with Goldens, the Labradors seem to, uh, transfer more easily, but not Goldens so much. Uh, there has to be that relationship, and there has to be that, I guess that feeling that, oh, this, he knows what he's doing, and
Okay.
maybe that dominance hierarchy, but
But you've trained dogs for other people, right? So when you,
oh, so how did we do it? It was gradual. So at first, particularly the fellow who'd never used a dog before, I just had him hold my arm at first, and we would go along certain streets or whatever, do certain crossings, just so that he could feel through me what the dog was doing. I said, keep your cane out just in case. But
hmm
so first he would feel through me what she was capable of doing.
okay.
And then I had him, obviously be able to do the obedience commands, left, right, forward, down, sit, stay, all that. And then I had him follow me with her on the same streets that we had done before. So he kind of knew the layout of what they were going to be, what it was going to be like.
hmm
And then I had him, then it was time where he would be ahead of me. So all through this time, some trust is developing between the two of them. With traffic work, I remember we set up traffic checks, or cars do certain things that and the dog is expected to stop. Whether they're backing out of driveways or turning corners, or so we put him through the same traffic checks that she had been put through in her own training, and I think it took us maybe he would come to my house, and then there was a point where he took her home with him and
hmm
came back to my house. That involved subway rides, so he already had
Okay.
done was pretty well.
Okay.
We just wanted to really cement that transfer. The Labradors seem to transfer fairly easily, um, but yeah, you'd have to do it systematically. So
hmm Okay. So,
uh, yeah.
okay. Thank you. So,
So Rafa worked for Tony while I was training Flicka, and Schubert worked for Mary Ellen while I was training Mozu. So, and then there had to be that working transfer from me to Mary Ellen.
okay. Your wife.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it has to be managed. Transfer, you can't just hand over a dog and say, oh, work with it. No,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. And I guess they have to learn also like a new environment, right? I mean, if they come from one home to another that has different sounds, smells, and all that, does that change? Does
Yeah,
that become distracting for them for a while, or?
well, these are, the dogs that I chose are, their temperament is pretty good. So
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't,
Yeah.
you have to allow for some time. that's not gonna be too big of a
Okay,
problem.
I see. Yeah. And I'm curious, did you find any difference? Now you've worked with all Labradors and Golden Retrievers, right? You said,
Yes,
okay, so no German Shepherds.
I
Or you
had a German Shepherd Raja
okay.
at he was when I was 15, but not for very long.
Okay.
He had tendencies that we just don't want
Mm,
in dogs, like being protective and these tendencies that we just. I saw tendencies in him as a puppy that just the retrievers just don't have.
okay. Are you finding or hearing that I don't know, are the Shepherds being used as much or they just, they're careful
They're not
behaviors?
being used as much, but they are being used. There's one school, Fidelco Guide Dog Foundation, where that's all they train.
Okay.
Sometimes the schools get started because the people are breed enthusiasts so seeing eye, they were definitely German Shepherd enthusiasts when they,
Yes.
and
We
then
see them all the
they
time
have
around here.
branched out.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
Morristown
that
is
you'll
where I live, and you see the seeing eye walking, training the German Shepherds right in the
the German
streets.
Shepherds.
Yeah, you'll see them with their little vests, and there you can see people like definitely they're in the process of training, and you kind of let them be and do what they're doing. It's a staple in the town. There's a statue in the middle of
Oh
like this
yeah,
the green of a German Shepherd and a man, and I
that
have to
man
say,
is probably Morris Frank, who was the
oh,
first
okay.
American to come back with a seeing eye dog from Europe.
Okay, so it's not just any old statue. I didn't realize that. Right.
No.
But I should have read the thing. I think I've taken a picture with it, but I never. But
It's Morris and Buddy.
oh, okay. It's a specific.
Buddy was the
Okay.
first seeing eye dog.
I
Uh,
need to be more alert, I think. But I have to say as an animal communicator, we tend to avoid and I'm using the word used as I'm talking because it's difficult. I don't know what other word, worked with. I'm not sure, but I have to sort of say as an animal communicator, I have to apologize almost for using the word used. We have a thing about not using that word. However, in this
Handled, if we
context,
can say handling at
yeah,
handling.
well, I guess to say, if I'm saying like, are they using German Shepherds anymore? I guess working with, I guess
Working with,
training,
yeah,
would be the way to put it.
training.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, but just not to objectify them, but so my bad. So I guess I want to go back to that a little bit with the intuitive thing. Am I making that up? That and I know it's different for everybody, but do you feel that generally like that if you're blind that somehow that kind of gives you a advantage with
I couldn't, I really
intuition?
generalize. I couldn't.
Okay.
No, I
Yeah.
can't because there are just too many different types of people. I don't think blindness in and of itself is going to make you particularly sensitive to pe- people's feelings. There are some rude
Okay.
blind people. There are some wonderful blind people. There are blindness. They're just every shade of type of person. And,
Sure, they're people.
they're people.
Yeah.
There's not going to be some. I mean, some people are kind of looking for some extra thing that
Right.
you have, but I don't think.
Superpower. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that happens.
I guess
People
I'm
develop these things.
Yeah, I guess the reason I'm thinking that is because and I wouldn't necessarily think it just with anybody. I would be thinking somebody who is blind who has animals, but especially somebody who's like working with a dog on a regular basis that they're dependent on that
Well, then
dog.
it comes with the dog, right? But it doesn't necessarily generalize to other dogs, right?
Okay.
It's the dog that you're
Yeah.
working with.
Yeah. So
I mean, you take a person like Jane Goodall.
yeah.
She was sensitive to animals. She says from practically from birth.
Mhm.
She had that in her, and she was from as a time in memoriam in her life. she remembers thinking, I want to live, in the either in the jungle or
Yeah.
the rainforest. She wanted that.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So that's what she did. And to find those chimpanzees, she was thinking, they're gonna be sending me home and I won't have found one. I have to find one. Nothing was set up for her.
Mm-hmm.
Had
Yeah.
to set this all up in her.
Amazing.
And that is
Yeah.
amazing. You take somebody like that.
Yeah. In a totally new environment, it is courageous that she did, and everything she did is amazing. And speaking of that, you've had quite a life of accomplishments and doing just amazing work to help the blind community and help with making guide dogs more acceptable. And I know that there was an incident that happened that kind of got you going with that, right? You had a problem with renting or something along those lines with a guide dog, and this was
Oh,
back in the day, a
yeah,
long time ago, right?
that was that was when I was moving from the University of Nevada, Reno, to take where I'd had a 1 year position, to take up another 1 year position at the University of Southern Colorado in Pueblo, Colorado. And we get there, and for some reason, they don't want the movers to move in my furniture with the dog. And
Wow.
so I contacted the National Federation of the Blind of Colorado,
Mm-hmm.
who at the time was Diane McGeorge. And she said, oh, we'll get our attorney on this right away. And within 15, 20 minutes, yeah, they, the power of the Federation, the guy said, okay, and ended up bringing me a bottle of wine, an apology. And I remember taking that bottle to the state affiliate meeting, and it was a big kind of celebration. And it's so
Yeah, and you
thank
served
God
as
it
a
wasn't a protracted thing.
yeah.
Yeah, I was president of the National Association of Guide Dog Users
Okay.
many years, and that's pretty good for somebody who never went to a guide dog school. But
Right, right.
I guess the people understood that I knew what I was doing, and so we worked on many things. One of the things I didn't know how to do when I first got a puppy was to teach them how to leash relieve. That's why I had so much trouble with that recall with Rafa at first, and it was only through Tony that I learned, yeah, they can leash relieve on pavement. And so I'm still a stickler for going on pavement now, so that because dogs won't, if you have them go on pea gravel or on grass, or well, then when you're in a big city and there's no pea,
Mm,
no
yeah.
grass, they won't go on the pavement. And then if you're in a hotel situation, um, lots of dogs, and you've got some dogs that haven't been acclimated to going on pavement, then of course there can be accidents, which we
Right.
don't want.
It's a good
But
point. Yeah.
I remember we had to be dealing with some rather basic issues like leash relieving on pavement, starting from the get-go. Don't and some or having teaching dogs to pull over, or uh, I don't know. It seems to have gotten better, but a lot of people, I just remember, uh, just didn't either the dogs weren't prepared, or they didn't know how to prepare their dogs for these convention settings where there are so many dogs,
Right. Yeah.
100 or 150 dogs.
Wow.
It has to be, and so I think it's gotten much better now. But we always had to deal with access issues and access issues relating to taxi drivers. And that's always an issue in cities.
Yeah.
And airlines, and oh gosh, it's all there's a. But I'm not. I don't do that anymore. So
Yeah.
the people can deal with it.
Yeah, things are changing too now. They're kind of restricting now more, not official, I don't think, guide dogs for blind people, but the whole pet therapy dog thing where you're trying to take them to travel. Now they're kind of starting to restrict that more. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, that's the problem. There's so many different kinds of service dogs, and
Yeah.
and this I think they're just now new airline regulations that I haven't looked at, but it is hampering to some degree, but it's still getting sorted out. But I know Air Canada, I have to tell them in advance that I'm coming with a guide dog. Not that I like doing so.
Mm.
But one time when I didn't, there was a huge delay, and
Oh no.
we never used to have to do that. We used to just show up and, okay, you're traveling with a guide dog, and
Yeah.
okay, now it's not like that, but it's because I guess, people have brought on animals on board the planes that weren't suitable for service work.
Okay. Yeah. Being in that situation, they're not really perhaps officially ready for
Well,
traveling and
I would say, look, if you see a blind person, you can tell if somebody's blind or not
yeah.
by if they make eye contact with you. You know that, duh,
Yeah.
right? That they're not going to make eye with you.
Right.
The dog is going to have a harness, and the dog will be able to guide.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the dog is able to guide, then it's presumably going to be well behaved. Uh, um, I say presumably because remember that dog that I was telling you about that was guarding in the restaurant, right?
Yeah. Right.
Barking.
They're not
But
all.
so the way around all of this is to have in the law, which many of them do, if the animal is not behaving properly, then the person with that service animal can be asked to leave.
Mm-hmm.
So too much noise, if it's if it's not following the proper decorum,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
then it's got to go.
Yeah.
But there's no guarantee that just because the dog came from a program that it's going to necessarily behave. Most of them do, just like most of the owner trained guide dogs that I know do. Never have met one that doesn't, but apparently, wider service arena, you've got people who are not even using the dogs as service dogs. And but again, in Kelowna, God, we don't really see that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I hear in other cities, yes, it seems to be happening. But
Well, I'm curious as you're
uh,
talking about that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Let me interrupt you.
well, all the establishments or businesses have one fallback. If the animal is not behaving properly, then they can ask the people to leave. I
Sure.
would think.
Yeah, that would be the yeah. Um, I guess I don't know. I don't know why it's gotten to this point. I guess they felt people were taking advantage of the whole situation and just bringing, dogs they didn't need to travel. But I hope that doesn't affect people who
Yes.
do need them. I hope that, that's my concern, is that it would somehow negatively impact those that do really need their dog or
Yes.
cat, whatever they
Yeah.
have,
Yeah. Yeah.
monkey or pig.
Well, you see, that's the thing. I
Yeah.
think the airlines now have said they have to be dogs. So we've
Okay.
eliminated other
Altogether.
species.
um,
Yeah.
I was thinking, do you feel that there is the kind of the difference in your training with, I mean, obviously they have to learn probably a lot more, but in sort of the way that you train a guide dog as opposed to just generally training a person training their dog, you know, what is different about that? Like, is there anything sort of other than just the obvious that's different?
um, Training a guide dog versus training a pet? Is that
Yes.
what
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, the pet you don't have to rely on for your safety. And the guide dog, so that training is not just to to pass some kind of obedience
Right. Uh-huh.
or some show requirement or some field requirement. Uh, this training involves the safety of the dog and the human being with that dog.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're a blind person using a guide dog, there comes a time where you're not using your cane. So if you're not going to be using your cane, it's because you want the dog to be reliable. And so the standard of precision and the standard for making mistakes is quite different.
Mm-hmm.
An animal that doesn't behave in the obedience ring, what does the mistake cost anybody? Nothing.
Yeah.
A guide dog that doesn't behave, doesn't stop at a flight of stairs, or
Mm-hmm.
doesn't care for an overhang. Hey, that hurts.
Yeah. Can be
So
very,
the
yeah.
dogs they have to be taught. This is serious. This is serious. You don't do this. You don't mess with this.
Yeah.
You have to do it. So some people have issues, I guess, with animals having to perform in certain ways. But I think there's a continuum between animals and people. And all people learn that we have to behave in certain ways, and if we don't, there are consequences. So if you um, if you don't show up for work, then you don't get paid. If you brandish a knife in front of somebody, you'll probably be arrested. I mean, things happen.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Animals can learn that too.
Mm-hmm.
Animals can learn that there are consequences, and the consequences, but we they're communicated through the leash correction, or through a voice, or through whatever gets through to the dog that they're no.
Yeah.
This
Mm-hmm.
is a serious thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you're walking with a guide dog, and you're walking along a double-sided platform. There are lots of people, let's say in the subway. You can't afford for the dog's attention to lapse so that your foot goes off the edge.
Yeah.
That can't happen.
Yeah.
So I taught my dogs, all of them, even if I bring you close to the edge, don't allow me to do it. That's because since I couldn't monitor it, this is how I had to do it. Don't allow me to bring you to even urge you to get close to the edge. If you do, you're, I'm going to give you a correction, not a strong one, but one that everybody knows the level of intensity that is required for their particular dog, right? Some it doesn't require much. Oh yeah, I know. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
It's like what?
Yeah.
So depending on the dogs you have, they all have to understand there's certain things you cannot do.
Yeah.
Can't.
And do you find that your work in psychology, your training, ha- helps you with the training that you're doing? There's some kind of
Well, in psychology, even when I took my first intro psych course, the basic there's classical conditioning and operant conditioning, and it's more operant conditioning
yeah.
that's used, I guess. I guess with clicker training, it's classical, but we.
And maybe explain to people what operant if they're not sure, if they're not aware of the
Oh,
two.
okay. Well, operant conditioning is that the dog emits a behavior, and that behavior is either reinforced or punished. That's the way it reinforced with praise or with food or with um, a nice sounding voice, or and the punishment is a correction, right? Or a sharp word, or um, and then of course the positive punishment and negative punishment. Well, the positive punishment is where you, let's say the dog does something um, and is administered a correction, whereas a negative punishment is the dog does something and then you take something away that it wants. That's kind of harder to do. But
Yeah.
and so training people have changed with our whole society about even what do we do with children, what do we do with dogs, and um, there are some programs now where uh, the training is heavily food dependent, and in the olden days you'd never be caught
Kind of looking down in
giving.
shame right now. I'm kind of like that's
Yeah,
my main
I
go-to.
mean,
I'm a
in
sucker.
in
It's
in,
really bad.
in the olden days, you wouldn't be giving dog food for that sort of work because it's they have to be concentrating on the task. So uh, it just depends. I just find that I've heard of this uh, where some people have said with the uh, training based primarily on food that if they stop giving the food, the dogs just don't work. Oh God, I can't even believe that. There is no way. None of mine would. No, no, that just wouldn't happen, And so,
Right.
what is the real
Yeah.
motivation? Is it so short term? Like,
Right.
I,
Yeah.
I, I wouldn't want my dog my safety to be dependent on how much kibble um, the animal gets. I want the animal to understand that this is serious, that my safety is involved, and you must be responsible. And it's way beyond if you got a piece of kibble or not.
Yeah, and I have to think probably that
Does
there.
that make sense?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, especially because my dogs could be better trained than they are, and as an animal communicator, I've said this before. I can be a little bit of a sucker. So, yes, it does, and I feel like dogs that this is kind of the sense I've had of dogs that are working dogs that this is kind of logical that they're they're more grounded. They're more balanced. You know, I'm sure that's a Cesar Millan thing that he talks about. Just that they're more
Mm-hmm.
in their um, you know, they're using their energy in a way that rewards them just simply by doing the work and doing it well. And um, that's
Oh, yes.
fulfilling. It's, you know, they feel good. Um, and I'm wondering, the dogs that you choose, how do you decide where, you know, what if you get a dog that after a year it doesn't take to this? How do you, you know, how do you find how do you source them, for lack of a better way to put it?
Oh, yeah. What a great, great question. So, in the beginning, I just had faith in the breed. A Labrador Retriever, it'll work.
Hmm.
For I made it work. Um, the Let's see. By the time I was dealing with Viva, a puppy, there was temperament testing that was done with
Okay.
the breeder, and I had pick of the litter for Viva. Schubert, it was based on same breeders, but I needed him. I needed him quickly, so I was going to go with he's related to Viva. He's
Mm.
got the same parents, so it should work.
It
It
should
did.
work. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Mozu, I think it was a friend of another breeder. They knew each other, and by that time, they knew what we were looking for. Um, Kenko, I looked very carefully on the internet, and I found uh, Rio Ranch Golden Retrievers, working dogs, solid. I could just tell that
Mm.
they were really um, very steeped in the hunting aspect of the golden. And these were dogs, it said, these are dogs that are meant to be in working homes.
Okay.
So, right, and she said, we're breeding for longevity. So I knew right away this is
Okay.
going to be a solid working dog that's going to require um, a working environment, and that's what I got. But she's absolutely solid.
And is that
Uh,
what you would recommend, or what would you recommend if somebody's going to do this on their own?
well, they
Um,
need to really be careful. Um, Choose the puppy very carefully. Choose the breeders very carefully. Choose the breed very carefully. But
so
there,
having a good, like you said, like those sort of criteria that they're bred for working, they've made they
well, you
health
want
is
certain
a priority.
things like health is a priority, but you these were always the criteria that I used. You don't want a dog that's afraid of thunderstorms, that's afraid of loud noises. Um, you don't want a dog that can't be made to settle down. You don't want any sign of nervousness or car sickness. No, you don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want you want a dog that's going to get along with other dogs. That's not going to be um, overly protective in this for a guide dog work. And these are just things that you look for. And also, of course, you want all of the OFA tests to come through in the parents to come out with no problems. Hip, elbows, eyes, heart, all of those things.
And there are people who specifically breed dogs for people to uh, take on as guide dogs, or is it just more?
No, the schools do. They have their breeding programs, um, but it's a whole different system, right? You've got dogs that are coming through. First, they have to come through a puppy home. Then they have to transfer to the kennel. and then they have to transfer to a blind person that's assigned to them. That's a lot of transferring.
Mm-hmm.
And some dogs just, whatever their triage system is. And remember, they have to be training the dogs for people who are not trainers, right? And people with all sorts of ranges of ability.
Mm-hmm.
The triage that happens. And amazingly enough, it works, it works quite well.
Yeah. Well,
I just wanted control from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Safer. I suppose it's a more reliable way
Well, it's
to go
just
about it.
it's my nature, my temperament, right?
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
It goes with my temperament.
I'm also wondering, unfortunately, animals don't live as long as we do. It's the hardest part of being an animal lover and pet parent. But I am wondering, what do you do when you've been sort of relying on a dog to help you for many, many years and then they pass? How much does that
It's
impact
very
you?
difficult. So one of the ways that I coped with it is I just stopped doing it. But now, what I said to myself when I got Kenko was, I'm going to enjoy every aspect of the process. So beginning to end. Um, so, and so let's say we had this happen again, that, 3 or 4, something happens to her.
Mm-hmm.
Emotionally prepared now to, oh, well, I'll just start over with another puppy. That's because that's just the way this goes.
Mm.
So, I used to think, oh, I put all this work into her and then she died and I got to start all over again. And then thinking, I'll only be really happy when she's fully trained and totally reliable.
Mm.
And no, if I think like that, I'll be just totally devastated if something happens. Whereas if I think every moment, every moment with her is going to be a moment of happiness,
Mm.
regardless of what stage she's at in her training.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it's because fundamentally, I can travel using a white cane. I can go anywhere I want. It's just that I like this feeling,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not like I can't travel. I mean, that's not that at all.
You're not completely dependent. So people in
Oh
general who are
no.
blind, they avoid that, making it so that they've always had, or that they're dependent on. They're both. They're
Well, I
trainers.
hope
They can do
so.
both.
There's some
Yeah.
people, well, it would be nice if they all could, but some people um, don't switch that easily and have maybe don't feel that comfortable using their long white canes. Some people, it's not even long; it's too short. Some people are using the right cane, but so they, yeah, it's pretty rough for them,
It must
and
be. Yeah.
they expect that the agency will be able to provide them with a replacement dog within a matter of months. It doesn't happen in weeks, it's months. And so, how they deal uh, between dogs, how they deal with when the dog is sick, if they don't have really good cane travel skills, well, they're going to be kind of up the creek. They'll have
Mm.
to either go play. Well, there's people can take taxis, I guess, or they can go with other people. I mean, it's not like you have to be totally stuck, but it's really good to have several uh, avenues through which you travel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like that. It would be very important not to be completely dependent on the dog for that. And I didn't even think of that when they're sick too. Yeah, that could happen too. They could hurt themselves or get sick, and they're
Yeah.
temporarily out of service, so to speak. Um, and I think that is a very good point that you made, that we need to just really be in the moment with our animals and value and just treasure every moment with them. So that's a big takeaway for me from this, to keep remembering that, even when you're a little frustrated out there with your your dog or
Oh,
cat,
yes.
someone out there who's, that would never be me. No. Um, but is there anything else that we have not discussed tonight that we've missed that you think is important,
Gosh.
for anybody, people who are blind and thinking about getting a guide dog or have a guide dog or not, just in general? Is there anything that you want people to think about or be more aware of when it comes to this
Well, not
area?
everybody's like me. There are people who are training dogs with a very different breeds than I would be using. But to them, that suits them, and so they're not everybody's the same. But if I think what is the same though is that uh, at some point, if somebody's going to not be using a white cane traveling, that dog has got to be dependable. And the first one to be uh, to notice that it isn't will be the trainer, the owner.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
So,
Yep.
uh, and I think the other thing I would say is that the the people who go to guide dog schools, when they come home, they really have to assume the role of trainer, because although the dog has been taught to behave in certain ways, they have to reinforce that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
they have to know what's happening. They have to reinforce it and they have to certain behaviors have to be corrected.
Okay.
So it's not like they're just hanging on and, oh, the dog was trained and I
Yeah.
just hang on, and then the next one comes. No, there's a very active role that anybody has to assume when they're working with a service animal or a guide dog. And
Mm-hmm.
always the case that the leader has to be the human being. That's what the dog looks to.
Mm-hmm.
The human the human is my alpha.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, that's an important
if the human is not the alpha,
important to remember.
I'll be
Yeah,
the
for all of
alpha, and
us.
then it doesn't always, yeah, it does not go the way we want.
Not always,
So
not automatically, always. Sometimes we have to really, some of us especially, the softies have to really, sometimes we have to adjust ourselves. So
to
important
the
to
animal you
remember.
have,
Yes,
right? To
absolutely.
the dog that you have.
Yep, you have to be prepared for that. You might have to do some looking inward to the that you might have to do some
Mm.
changing. I know I've had to do that, and that's just part of the journey. Animals are here, I believe, to help us in many ways, and sometimes it's to just change, evolve as people. So I am grateful for them, and I'm grateful for this discussion, because it's just so fascinating to me, that animals will take, that we've just developed this way, that animals can take on these roles of helping us in this way. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I really appreciate everything you've shared with us tonight. if there's anything I have missed, please jump in before we finish up tonight. But I just want to
Well,
thank
that's
you.
why dogs were developed, right? They were developed by humans from the wolves. Along this is not recent. This dogs and humans working together is ancient history,
Mm-hmm.
and it's remarkable
It is
that
absolutely.
has happened. And but all these I mentioned all these dogs at the beginning. They've passed on, but they've all left their mark with me.
Mm-hmm.
Not people's my sister is amazed that I remember all these animal names, these dogs, but I because they have left their mark on me. So
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely. And it seems like they've really they've they've been a big part of the work that you've done to help other people. So we didn't even totally get into all of that, but we know that you have done quite a bit. So you know, I know that you said that you would be open to people if they have questions to reaching out to you, wondering how they could do that.
yeah, okay. So my email is P Gabias, Gabias at Gabias wellness wellness.com. Gabias at gabiaswellness.com. And that that's different from my UBC email because one of the things I do with people is I'm a wellness consultant with a large Japanese company called Nikken, Nikken. So I help people improve in 5 areas of life: body, mind, family, society, and finances. And we use these Japanese technologies that um, use magnetic energy and bioceramic energy, and we work with water and sleep and air and nutrition and all things.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wonderful.
the
And
other
then,
thing is we help people become part of what we call a uh, transformational business with purpose. And the purpose is just to help people improve in these 5 areas of life: body, mind, family, society, and finances. And to make it short, I got into this because my back hurt, and it doesn't hurt anymore.
hmm,
I couldn't sleep. I can now. And even though I'm a professor with 4 children, we needed extra income. So all those things have changed since I started expanding this company 20 years ago.
wonderful. So they can reach you at both the P Gabias, and I will have this in the description below, links for all of this. So don't worry if you didn't get this, but I'll have it there for people.
Gabias at gabiaswellness.com. And then my website is www.nikken.com/NA, another /Paul Gabias. And that there's a contact information there on that website.
Okay, so people can reach you for a lot of different things, animal to human wellness, and I'll have those links as I mentioned again. And if you want to reach out to me for animal communication or animal massage, acupressure, energy work, essential oils, CBDs, lots of different things, you can do that at www.intuitivetouchanimalcare.com. As of today, I have some nice holiday specials running that you might want to check out, gift certificates and offers. And I also teach, so if you want to check that out, please do. And thank you so much, Dr. Gabias, for joining us tonight. And thank you all for watching.
Thank you, Anne, for giving me so much time and interviewing me. And it was a pleasure speaking with you and with your audience.
Likewise, absolutely. Thank you. And good night, everybody. And stay warm, especially if you're getting hit by the snowstorm. Good night.
Good night.
Bye bye.